programs, and of course Mother Nature is showing me that it's not quite spring. But we're still going to think ahead to spring, and Ruth Coors has graciously accepted the invitation to talk to us. She's been a master gardener here in the Lafayette area since 2005. She's also been a master naturalist since 2006, and she's been a beekeeper for 8 years. And today she's going to share with us some information about bees in general and also about beekeeping. So please welcome her this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you, Diane.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, you need this.
I didn't get all my paperwork out, did I? I have all these nice posters I did not get set up, so Diane's going to fix them up. So that if you like to, after my speech or whenever possible, you may check these out. They're all about the bees. So when I was growing up, my dad was a beekeeper, so all my life I knew about the bees. And when we had our first farm, he came to me and he said, "Ruthie, help me move this hive of bees." I said, "Okay, Dad." So I put on my leather gloves, and the next thing I got stung all over through my leather gloves. And I said, "Wait a minute, Dad, we have to put this down, I have to put on some nice thick fuzzy gloves," which I did. And I thought to myself, I'm never going to be a beekeeper. But then there was this class in Fowler, Indiana, and it's been maybe 8 years ago, and everybody signed up for a free hive of bees, and I won. I said to my husband, "Oh, I guess we were meant to be beekeepers." So we've had our ups and downs and our losses, and we're still hanging in there. There are 4,200 different bees in the United States. Actually, there are 20,000 different bees in the world. And, I'm sorry, I'm new to this. I hit the one on the right. Is that correct? Try other side? Okay. Now. There it is. Okay. Honey was in the tombs of the pharaohs and is still good. It's the way they sealed it up, actually. The best records of beekeeping come from the Egyptians. And to the Egyptians, it was an important spiritual, social, and economic. It was for both the living and the dead. They sealed their dead with wax from the beehives. And that's how they keep. And I can't see very well over there, but I've got a few notes, so bear with me. Everything on the screen is not the same as in my notes. There are 3 different kinds of bees. There's the queen, she's the one in the center. The drone is the male bee on the right, and on the left is the worker bee, the female. The queen, she is the egg layer of the hive. She touches all the other bees in the hive with her pheromones, and this keeps the hive in order. If another bee of a different hive tries to enter, they know and they won't let them in. It's the scent, the pheromones. So that's how they keep all their invaders out. She lays most queens lay 2,200 eggs a day. So she already started laying in January. And by spring, she's ready with a full hive of bees. The drone, his only purpose is to mate with a virgin queen. So he leaves the hive and he goes into a field where all these drones meet in this field, and they send out their pheromones so the virgin queens will find them. The virgin queens make it, well, they're no longer virgins after that, and they make it back to the hive 75% of the time. They might get eaten by a bird or something like that, but they usually make it back to the hive. Oops, going the wrong way. Okay, there we are. So the worker bee is the one who does everything. As soon as she is born, she emerges from her cell and she gorges on pollen and water, and then she cleans out her cell, and then she becomes a nurse bee to other bees that are not born yet. She does many things in the hive. She cleans, keeps the hive clean. She takes care of the queen, feeds her and grooms her. She makes wax. She has 6 wax glands on the underside of her body, and she'll sit there and eat 7.5 to 8 pounds of honey to make 1 pound of wax. So she is very busy, and she becomes a guard bee, and that's one of the last things she does in the hive. At the age of 6 weeks, she is a forager. And that's about the life of her. 3 weeks she is a forager, and then 6 weeks is her life, the end of her life. In the fall, bees are born in late August, and they can live 6 months. They are born with more fat on their bodies. When they're in the hive in the fall, they keep warm, they feed into their little clusters, and they keep the queen in the center, and they rotate. Okay, so we've talked about the worker bees. Okay, go on. Alrighty. So here is a picture of a female worker bee. And she collects pollen in her little basket. And the forager bees are out there. The flowers send out their nectar. They make nectar, and they make extra because they know insects are going to eat it. And the bees are attracted to the flowers. They have these scent glands on their legs and the narcinol gland at the tip of their abdomen. So they fill their proboscis up with nectar, and they take it back to the hive. And when they get to the hive, if it is not of good quality, the hive bees will not accept it. So they have to go a long distance. They might have to travel 5.5 miles. They like to stay within 2 to 3 miles to get all their nectar and their pollen and their water, but they may have to travel further to get enough. It depends upon the scarcity of the plants. So, let's see. The bees have 2 stomachs. They have, the one stomach is called the crop, the honey stomach, and then they have the digestive stomach. So when the forager sucks the nectar through her proboscis, and it goes into her honey stomach. And then she takes it back to the hive and gives it to a hive bee. The hive bee takes this in, finds a quiet place in the hive, and blows bubbles of it. This evaporates the moisture out of it in the warmth of the hive. Do I need to go further with this? Too far? Okay. The other bees, after she puts this into a cell, they fan it to get the moisture out of it. It has to be down to 17 to 18% moisture or it will ferment. Beekeepers use what is called a refractometer to check the moisture before they take any honey from the hive. So, honey is composed of 2 sugars, simple sugars, glucose and fructose. And the workers produce an enzyme in their gland, their hypopharyngeal glands. Also, they add an enzyme called glucose oxidase, which breaks down into gluconic acid. This is the major acid of the honey keeping. And also they break it into hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is a mild antibacterial substance. And along with glucose oxidase, this is the reason honey is a safe and digestible food. You don't need to digest honey because it's pre-digested by the bees. It's absorbed through their digestive tract. All other sugars must first be digested by being converted into glucose and fructose before they can be absorbed by your body. So you have less energy from them. Honey contains minerals, vitamins, acids, pigments, aroma components, and many things it is. Such as medicine, it's in cosmetics, lotions, soaps, gum, candy, golf ball centers. Now, who would have thought about golf ball centers? And embalming fluid, plus much, much more. Over half of the major nectar sources are not native to the United States. They came over and they are weed plants. Bees seek out the wild flowers. Let's see, do I have that? Oh, yeah, I've got that up there. Okay. Such as raspberries, dandelions, clover, the purple coneflower, much more. And then we have the traveling beekeepers who travel to the almond trees, the groves in California, and without them we wouldn't have almonds. And then there's the ones that go to Florida, to the citrus groves, and to Michigan, to the apple orchards. So 1/3 of every bite of food you eat comes from the bee's pollination. And one bee in her whole lifetime will only produce 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey. So we need a lot of bees. Okay, there are different types of honey: crystallized, cream, comb, chunk, and jar honey. We all know about the jar honey. And whenever you get a chance, I have some jar honeys that a friend of mine gave me to bring here so you could taste them. She was in Florida, so they aren't native to up here. One is Christmas berry, and there's 3 more different ones. The creamed honey is when they take a crystallized honey and they mix it with a liquid honey, and they do some spinning and all, and it comes out cream. It's kind of a whitish color. The comb honey is when they put a thinner wax in the frames, and then after the bees have filled it, they cut it out, and you'll see that in jars. The chunk honey is where they take chunks of the wax and they put it in the jars, and then they add more honey with it. So, and the crystallized honey is if you don't keep it in a decent place, a warm enough place. Anything above 60 degrees is okay, but below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, it will crystallize. And if it becomes granulated, you want to take your honey and your jar and sit it down in some not very hot water, like boiling, but warm enough water that it will return to a liquid state. And you may need to change your water several times. And then there's the adulteration of honey. This is very sad that China has found a loophole in our laws and sends us blended honey. Their blended honey is full of antibiotics and heavy metals. It gets over here, it gets mixed with our honey here in the United States. And then it's put on the shelves, pure honey, product of the United States. So if you really want to know that you are getting good honey, you want to find a beekeeper or go to a natural food market. Adulteration of honey is very common in England and all over Europe, and I'm afraid we have the same problem here. What they do is they add corn syrup in with our honeys also, many times. And corn syrup, the bad thing is it does not digest in our bodies, and you'll find it in many foods. It just goes into fat in our bodies. So this is a very sad thing, and the only way to detect corn syrup in any honey is through the lab test. So, are there any questions? Yes?
I saw something on Facebook where they were, instead of the traditional pulling out, for the beekeepers, instead of the traditional pulling out the trays or whatever, there was actually almost a spigot on the side, and some tilting action, and they were doing that so that it was much easier. Have you experienced
I
that?
know about that, but that's very few beekeepers do that. It's a whole different setup with the hive and all. Yes, they have this hive, and then they have this spigot coming out, and the hive is different from the rest of our hives. The whole thing is different, and I don't know too much more about it, so I can't tell you much more. I'm sorry. Another question?
When I had my children, I was told by the pediatrician not to give my children honey for the first 2 years. So what is in honey that you don't give to children?
If you are buying honey, like I said, adulterated honey, you are taking your chances. My brother was very ill when he was born, and the doctors didn't think he was going to make it. The only thing that stayed down, and he was just an infant, my mother fed him our honey, my dad's honey, and that's what pulled him through. But you don't know what you're getting today.
I
Yes.
understand there's diseases in a lot of the beehives. Is that a serious problem?
That is very serious. We are battling, the most serious is the varroa mite. It gets on the backs of the bees, and it sucks their blood out, but the worst thing is they put viruses into the bee. But there are other different diseases out there. Tracheal mites, where they would get into the throat of the mite and suffocate it, we have about eradicated that. That was in the lower states. Yes.
I have a question. When I was younger, we had bees in the orchard. So, but we also lived on a farm. So how do we tell if we have clover honey, or we have citrus honey, or we have anything else? Because these bees go in different directions to get their supply. So what?
Good question. When they go to the orchards, like the apple orchard, it's called apple blossom honey because it's a monocrop. They're only doing the apples. When my bees, they go to all the different flowers, so I can only call them wildflower honey. And a monocrop is one honey.
It won't go to any other plant?
Well, see, they're put specifically in these orchards where they will only go to one crop to pollinate. And these people pay big money to the beekeepers to go there to pollinate their crops.
So you said that the bee will only go to one place.
No, see, they are placed in a huge orchard so that they're only pollinating that crop. See, that monocrop. See, one crop. Now, if they're going to many different places, they cannot call them a certain honey. Are there, yes?
I was given a jar of Greek honey of mine, and to me, it tasted kind of like molasses. What are they, I mean, is that different flowers, or?
Yes, they do have different flowers over there.
Well, yeah.
I don't know about Greek honey, I'm very sorry. I just know that
Well, it's kind of like a mixture. It was pretty good, really.
Uh-huh. But now also there's another thing about the color of honey.
Yeah.
As a rule, the lighter color honeys are spring crops, and the darker honeys are your fall crops, like the asters and goldenrod, things like that are in your fall honey. So they will be darker.
Well, you mentioned to separate out the additive there, put it in hot water for a while, change it a few times and all of that. How's it look like?
Honey in the jar, it has to stay in the jar, and the jar gets set down into the hot water.
Yeah,
The very warm water, not really boiling.
yeah.
That's if the honey has crystallized and you want to get it back to liquid.
Well, doesn't 5 or 10 seconds in the microwave do the same thing? It does
Anytime
for me.
you put something in the microwave, you actually lose 80 to 90% of your vitamins and minerals. The enzymes are killed, especially in honey. Anytime you put your honey down into, say, a very hot cup of tea, you're killing the enzymes. And the enzymes are what are digest. See, enzymes digest.
Well, it takes a lot less time and you still got 90%. You only lose 10.
Just let your tea cool down a little. Yes,
Don't we hear a lot today about a shortage of bees?
that is correct. Nationwide, I think it was last year, we lost like 70% of our bees. No, wait a minute, I'm sorry, 50% of our bees nationwide. But here in Indiana, we lost a lot more of our bees. I lost all mine. Yeah, it's very bad. Well, one thing you have to remember, and I'm glad you brought that up, I forgot to say. If you are thinking about spraying your plants, the only one I would recommend is Spinosad, sold at Bennett's. It's more organic. However, don't spray the blossoms because then you kill the bees. And if you plan to spray, you want to spray after the sun goes down and the bees are back where they belong, in their hives, the trees, or whatever. It's beginning to be that only the managed bees are going to make it. Eventually you won't see, if we keep going like this, we won't see the wild bees anymore. Yeah, beekeepers have to be very diligent. In August, late August, many of us use a thyme, the herb thyme, that type of product called Apivar, and we put that in the hive to kill the mites. Now, they've been trying to breed bees that are mite resistant. In other words, they'll bite the mites off of each other. Yes?
Is there ever a time when you could say the bees go rogue and become wild, or will they always stay with the hive?
No, they will not always stay with the hive. Right now, I'm worried about mine swarming. I have to, as soon as, first